On Thursday night, I watched the first of a three-part PBS docuseries called A Year to Change the World. This series follows Greta Thunberg, the now 18-year-old climate activist, on her campaign to save the world. Greta is asking every one of us to act to slow down climate change. Her message is clear, and scientists agree. We need to keep global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees in order to give our species the best possible chance to avoid catastrophe. Greta is a fascinating person with an extraordinary gift for speaking humbly and boldly into one of the greatest crises our world has ever known. And something that she said really stuck with me. It was Greta's profound response to the question, is there any hope for our world? Greta says, the one thing that we need more than hope is action. Once we start to act, hope is everywhere. So instead of looking for hope, look for action. Then and only then will hope come. This quote, while directed towards the climate crisis, has a much broader application. It addresses a challenge we face every day. If we get so focused on our hopes, on our dreams of the future or memories of the past, we risk missing the present opportunity to take action at a critical moment. Today, as I conclude my chaplaincy at Northwestern and this series on the love languages of God, we look at the oft-desired but difficult to achieve practice of quality time. My goal is to give us a focal point which emboldens risk-taking in critical moments. My theory is that the practice of risk-taking transforms ordinary time into quality time. To see the benefits of risk-taking, we'll look at two metaphors, an ordinary and a quality shepherd. Today's passage from the Gospel of John, Jesus lifts high the image of a good shepherd as emblematic of God's care for all of humanity. He contrasts the good shepherd with a hired hand. What's the difference between the two? While both get the basics of the job done, the difference is discovered in the presence of a predator. When a wolf appears, the hired hand runs away, while the good shepherd saves his sheep from danger. Why is it that the hired hand runs away? Because he does not love the sheep like the owner, like the good shepherd. These metaphors clearly illustrate that there is a love greater than the one known by humanity, a love which only God possesses. Jesus promotes that higher form of love, saying this, no one has a greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. What does this kind of love look like? Jesus demonstrates this greater love on the cross by laying down his life for all. This heroic, life-giving, sacrificial love is the type of love that we all long for. It's the love that we hope to display towards our friends, our family, even our pets, especially when a predator attacks. Yet Jesus is pointing out a hard truth about our limited capacity to love. While we may aspire to love selflessly, there's a difference between the hired hand and the good shepherd. One, motivated by a genuine concern for his sheep, is willing to go all the way to the grave to demonstrate love, while the other is in the business of shepherding for less than a divine reason. This hard truth brings to mind a memorable exchange at the end of the Gospel of John between Peter and Jesus. After Peter's 3 denials, after Jesus' gruesome death, and even after Jesus' post-resurrection appearances, the Apostle Peter is uncharacteristically cautious around the risen Jesus. Perhaps Peter feels like he's failed the ultimate test. Perhaps he is filled with self-hatred for letting down his friend in his moment of greatest need. Yet, despite this series of failures, Jesus seeks out Peter again and again. While pain and uncertainty has led Peter back to his former life as a fisherman, by the third time Jesus tracks him down, Peter finally lays aside his shame, embraces his old habit of taking risks, and jumps from the boat to swim to shore. As Peter approaches land, Jesus has started a fire and invites him to contribute a few freshly caught fish to the meal. When they settle in for the feast, Jesus asks Peter the question that they have both been wondering about. Do you love me? And Peter answers, you know that I dearly love you. But to understand this exchange, we must look at two of the Greek words which are both translated in this text as love. The Greek words are agape and phileo. Agape love is that unconditional love of God, a higher kind of love, while phileo is the human affection displayed most clearly in a healthy family. So phileo is the best of human love, and agape is the best of divine love. And while we don't see these two unique words in our English translation, their use in the original text makes all the difference in this pivotal moment. When Jesus asks Peter these questions, the first two times, Jesus asks this, Peter, do you agape me? And Peter answers honestly, I dearly phileo you. You hear the difference? You see, at this point, Peter has learned that there is a difference between the love of God and the love that he has experienced in the human family. The third time, Jesus asks the question. He adopts Peter's word choice, and he asks Peter this question, do you phileo me? Upon the intensification of the verb, Peter wisely answers, Jesus, you know all things. I do dearly phileo you. In Peter's statement, you know all things, my mind flashes back to an eerily similar situation where Peter and Jesus are in the upper room, and Jesus essentially says, now I'm going to give my life away. Peter responds, no, I will lay my life down for you. While misguided in this earlier declaration, by the end of the Gospel of John, we see that Peter has finally learned the lesson of the limited capacity of human love and the unlimited capacity of God's love. Through the trial and the testing of the cross, Peter now stands in awe of Jesus, the one who could express love every painful step along the way, all the way to and through the cross. And while just 3 days earlier, Peter had promised that he would lay down his life for his friend Jesus, upon further reflection and upon the experience of missing that opportunity to demonstrate love, Peter no longer holds on to this false idea that his love is unlimited, but he stands in awe of the unconditional love of God, a love practiced solely by the Creator, the owner, the Good Shepherd. The remarkable thing about this exchange is that even with the knowledge in Peter's mind of his limited phileo love, Jesus asks Peter to assist in what only the Good Shepherd can consistently do: feed my sheep. Why would Jesus ask Peter to assist in something that he has clearly failed to do in the past? Why would God ask us to do something we have clearly failed to do before? Because now Peter knows what you and I can know too, that the key to feeding the sheep is abiding in, drawing from, and modeling our lives after the agape love of God. For it is not from our limited love that we nurture one another, but it is from the boundless love of God that we care for all of creation. This is why we must remain centered on Jesus, for he is the emblem of God's love on full display. Centering our lives on him allows us to abide in the love of God, to draw from this essential resource in the face of any crisis. Like Peter, we never know when we may be asked to give deeply of ourselves in a moment of need. Perhaps that moment is now, in the midst of the uncertainty about the future of the church and the chapel. Perhaps that moment is now, in the midst of a climate crisis, a racial reckoning, a global pandemic. Whatever crisis God calls us to address, may we be the people who take the risk to humbly and boldly act, turning ordinary time into quality time, because we acted with hope for all of God's creation. Amen.